So I wanted to make a video for new manga readers and get some answers from some veteran manga readers. I've read some manga, but it's been a couple decades. Basically, when the Shonen Jump magazine was coming to America in the early 2000s, I had the first 9 or 10 of those. But since then, I haven't really read much. Interested in getting into some new books, and I keep sending messages to my friend Brian here and asking him for recommendations. And it occurred to me this might make a good video for other people that are manga curious. So, Brian, welcome to the channel.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You will be playing the role of the manga expert today. But I also encourage anyone else that's watching, if you have any recommendations or comments on what we say, go ahead and leave them down below. So I have a few talking points for us, if you don't mind, Brian.
Go ahead.
So where do I begin with manga?
I started my journey last year and I already filled up a Billy bookshelf, which is the most common bookshelf for manga. Because of a YouTube death spiral, I've always been kind of manga adjacent, and mainly I went with recommendations from a buddy of mine, Hoagie, who's British trademark, and recommended me the Junji Ito horror series, and I really enjoyed those. I also enjoyed the presentation of them being nice hardcovers with little color inserts here and there. But then a YouTube death spiral led me to watching MangaTube make recommendations, and I decided to jump in whole heart. And I started mainly with action, or shonen, as most people refer to it as. But I've actually diverged quite a bit from that. I still read my fair share of shonen manga, but my tastes have broadened greatly since I got into it.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess right now, so I'm going into this, I haven't read anything, again, like I said, since, I don't know, 20 some years ago. But if I had to guess, I would say I'd probably lean towards the shonen stuff. But who knows? I'm willing to try the other stuff and see where it goes. But it is intimidating walking into a store and seeing the series and like how many volumes there are. And it's just, it's a bit intimidating. Like, where do you jump into it? Like, there's just books for miles, it seems like.
The one thing I would say is, think of how intimidating it would be to say, I want to read Spider-Man. Where do I start?
Okay.
So at least with manga, if you have some titles, you're like, start at number 1. And you could just go pick up number 1, typically, as long as it's in print. Most stores will stock always a number 1 along with the latest issues, latest volumes. So I think it's actually easier to get into manga once you know where your interests lie and what titles people will recommend for those interests. But don't be afraid to broaden out to like stuff I never thought I'd get into are not my favorite mangas. So.
Okay. And as far as like reading backwards or reading, I guess not backwards, right to left, again, like
it's
20 years
it's
ago,
the Hebrew way.
Huh?
It's the Hebrew way.
Okay.
Jesus can't be wrong.
Well, who's to say? But again, like in the past, I didn't have a problem with it, but you bought me a book a couple years ago for Christmas. I've tried to read that a couple times and kept getting stuck up because I was getting mixed up. And I know almost every manga has that idiot page if you open the book the wrong side that teaches you to read it correctly. And I'm sure I'll get it, but is there any like beginner manga to kind of train yourself for that?
There is some of the manga. I don't know if you're aware, but a lot of webtoons have become very popular to the point where they're getting deluxe printed editions as well. And a lot of times they stock those in the manga section as well. Lore Olympics is a very popular one that a lot of people read. And the style of that is more like, I call them 4-panel manga, where it's like a landscape format, 4 panels, top to bottom. So you're not going right, left, right, left, right, left. You're just going top, bottom, and you're just reading from right to left on the page, but it's easy to know what box to read next.
Okay.
The one I recommend for that, it's actually not on my list, but something like it is Komi Can't Communicate. It's a kind of slice of life high school romance type book.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned that before, and I've seen that. I've been doing a little bit of research, watching a bunch of other videos, and it seems like a lot of people are bringing that up. It seems pretty popular.
Yeah, it's very wholesome and cute, and it also, I actually recommend that not because of what it is, but because of sort of how it takes place, where it's very common for it to be in a school setting. Also, the importance of and you'll see this across many different genres of books. It's like, so you're at a high school, okay. Their high school is sophomore, junior, senior, so it's 3 years. So there's only 3 years of high school, and they always fixate on a cultural festival that they do, where every class puts on skits or sells stuff or does manga club and presentations to get people to join their extracurricular activities, which are huge over there. And it kind of shows you what life is like in Japan, at least at that age level. And that's the majority, unfortunately, is a lot of it's high school. So some of the ones I've picked out here are more adult, like college and professional. And we're starting to see more and more of that instead of just all being high school. But it's interesting to see how their education system differs from ours.
Yeah.
That's a great one to start, because it shows you those tropes that are going to show up in even, say, a baseball manga. Because the baseball club is huge, because baseball is huge in Japan. And that baseball clubs in high schools show up in a lot of mangas. So it's interesting that they don't have like sports and extracurricular sports like we do. It's more like clubs.
Okay.
So, but you get kind of that overview, and Komi Can Communicate, of what high school life in Japan's like.
So before we dive into the next one, you brought up baseball there. I have been looking around for a baseball manga, and I've asked a few different people for a baseball manga that's been released in the US, and haven't really got very many answers. Everyone seems kind of stumped on that, but I know there's a lot of baseball manga in Japan, so I'm guessing it just doesn't come over. But if anyone knows of one, please let me know. I'm interested.
Yeah, I think one of the ones I was looking at, it came over the US, but it's out of print. So I'm hoping that comes out. It's funny, it's easier to find a sport manga in print in the US based on American football.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah. And I learned from that, I'm like, do they even play that over there? I did some research. Yes, there's college American football teams.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of all I had to get into. Do you have any recommendations for new readers?
I do. I should actually. Let me start how I started, because I was going to switch up the order here a little bit. I'll start with the shonen, which is basically young action. You'll see superhero or spy or fantasy, but it's all actiony. Let me start there with an all-time classic that I recommend wholeheartedly, and that's Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay.
Many of you probably are at least aware of this one, because it was on Adult Swim. The manga was or the anime was. They've recently printed all of the volumes. I think there's 28 volumes into these deluxe hardcovers with nice foil, color inserts, accent pages that are like transparent kind of things. And at the back, there's always like bonus material of sketches and things like that. But so it's basically a volume and a half in each of these hardcovers. So there's only, is there like 18 of these, as opposed to the 28 you get in the individual volumes. And this basically, like, I saw the anime and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute. And people keep raving about it. I'm like, I mean, the anime was good, but it didn't blow my mind. And then I started reading this. This is way darker than the anime. Basically, alchemists have the ability to transmute one material to another, or one material into energy. So basically, state-sponsored alchemists are weapons of mass destruction for what is clearly a fascist state bent on committing genocide on their neighbors. And it goes into great detail about how that's done. And these heroes are not always the most heroic people. So it's way darker than you think, but also has its lighter moments. The art is great. They call them mangakas, the people that write these, but most of them are also the writers and the artists, but not always. This woman is, she actually shows up in my list twice. This is the first one that I put. But yeah, this is great, amazing, great detail, especially in the backgrounds that you see. The art for the characters themselves is simple in the face, but it's like he's got a cybernetic arm and actual leg. You can't see in this, but there's great detail in the technical aspects of this. So I love the art. I love the story. This is probably my single favorite manga, and it also just happens to fall under the shonen/action. So this one is where I would point people to start if they're into shonen jump type material.
Okay. Yeah, both my kids have been watching the anime for that.
Yeah, and I don't remember like the leader of the country that Full Metal he's Full Metal Alchemist, and there's the Flame Alchemist and all these different specialty alchemists. But the leader of the country is called the Fuhrer. So you kind of pick up what they're putting down there.
Yeah.
And like some of the things that would be kind of taboo for us to put in stuff that's targeted at young teens, Japan doesn't care. They'll put it in there. And God bless them for that, weirdos. And these are still in print. You could get these special editions at Barnes & Noble's where I got the bulk of mine, but any sort of decent bookshop that carries manga will have these, and they're always in stock. So easy to find. Get them like I don't see this going out of print ever. It's just so popular.
I know it's different for each different kind of publisher, but if like comparing mangas to like collected Western comics, so like omnibuses or
Right.
something, how long after one is released can you expect to still find it on shelves before it's like, oh crap?
It's all 100% dependent upon popularity. Typically, if it makes its way to the shores in the U.S., the big manga publishers, Viz Media, Kodansha, Dark Horse does a lot of great stuff as well. If you're familiar with them from the Western comics, if it typically makes it here, it does well, and is always available. And if it does even better in the U.S., you'll start to see these deluxe editions come out, much like you do with the Marvel omnibuses and things like that, collector editions. And that's the way I prefer to read it because the cheapest manga is typically the Viz manga, which retails for $9.99, and that's printed on almost like a newsprint. Think old school comic quality paper because it's meant to be disposable, just like the old school comics used to be. They're not really collector's items, but I think they learned quickly that the U.S. audience loves their fancy schmancy editions. So I'd be curious to see how common collector's editions are over there versus here, but only the really popular stuff gets that kind of treatment. The other one I'd recommend, this is this is an ongoing, Full Metal Alchemist is complete. So you don't have to wait for the next volume to come out. You could read it all at once if you want to. The next one that's actually ongoing right now is Kaiju number 8. Most people in nerd media know Kaiju is like Godzilla, Mothra, the giant monster genre. This is also fun because his protagonist in his mid to late 30s. And his job is he's part of the cleanup crew that cleans up the giant carcasses of kaiju that are destroyed by the military. And that's important because they use the organs and whatnot to create their weaponry to counteract kaiju. And then his dream is to be a part of that kaiju defense force, but he's kind of lazy, but he finds a new passion for it and ends up leveraging his knowledge of cleaning up the mess to help them defeat kaiju later on. And I won't tell you how he becomes a very valuable member of the kaiju destruction group, but yeah, it's a rare older male protagonist in a manga.
Yeah, this was one of the ones where when I reached out to you, you recommended this to me, and it stuck out like immediately. I was like, okay, that one looks
You're like I know what a kaiju is.
Yeah.
And also a pro tip, I'll try to provide collector tips here. This one is popular enough where it'll show up at Target. Target or even Walmart are great places because they're usually 20% off. So this one is a $10 manga, so it's only $8 if you get it from Target.
Or Target has their buy two get one free sales too.
Yes, they do, and that's that I stock up. So basically, they have all the what I call the normie manga, which would be your My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, things like that, Sailor Moon. But they do have Kaiju number 8, and they have another one that's going to come up on my list here. Another kind of shonen, Spy X Family. This is also available at Target. So these are good intro to the manga genre and also the cheapest way to get in. This also is ongoing. I think they're on number 9 right now. But yeah, this one is basically think Cold War era, but the countries are not real. Cold War era spy where he has to go after a radical leader of the East, which is pretty much Russia. And so he has to adopt a daughter and have a fake wife in order to infiltrate this prestigious school. And his daughter that he's adopting is a telepath. So she knows that he's a spy. And his wife, fake wife, is an assassin. So the telepath daughter knows that as well. But they don't know that she's a telepath. So hijinks ensue. It's very cute. it's wholesome in a strange way, even though there's a good amount of violence and people dying in it. But yeah, it's a delight, and again, a good cheap way to get into manga. So both of these, you could go get volume 1 at Target. Now they might not have every volume available. They'll have like volume 1 almost always, and whatever the latest version is. But they might not have everything in between. But that's when you go to your Barnes and Noble, or Barbara's Books is another one out by us that's out there. So those are my 3 action/shonens that I recommend. Now let's move on to what has become my favorite genre, slice of life. Basically following people throughout their daily lives. It also gives you a nice peek into the Japanese culture. And this was the first slice of life that I read, and one of my favorite of all time. It's called Laid Back Camp. In Japan, it's called Yuru Camp. It basically follows a high school girl who likes to solo camp. And the fun thing about this, it's also educational because it explains the gear, how much she paid for it, what it's used for every time they go on a camping trip. And then other girls in her high school notice she does this and want to join in, and it becomes a big camping club. But it's funny because they mention real stores in Japan where they get their camping gear, and then they start getting part-time jobs, and what's that like in Japan to get money to buy better camping gear, which I can really kind of identify with because I like to waste money on camping stuff. Of course, I do it with a giant RV because I'm not sleeping in a tent. I'm not a hobo. If I want to sleep in a tent, I'll move to Seattle. But this one is also we're getting a Yen Press, and one thing I like about a lot of the Yen Press is another huge publisher is a nice matte finish on the covers because glossy's out. It's got to be matte now. Really great artwork, key art on the covers. And all of the art in this is great. They do a lot of most of it takes place around Mount Fuji, so you see a lot of vistas. Even though it's just black and white, you see a vista of Mount Fuji, and it just looks amazing. And I call this also falls under what I call cozy manga, the kind of manga that you want to have a cup of cocoa with while you sit on the couch with a blanket. So that's a great one.
The slice of life category, is that kind of like I mean, I'm assuming there's more of a plot to it, but is it just like people doing vlogs, sort of, in a literature form?
Sort of, but this one, it's funny because if you read a lot of them, they'll have like a little background in the back of most of them, and it'll sometimes these slice of life where it's very specific, like slice of life, I'm in a camping club in high school with friends. Sometimes the mangaka never did that or did it a little bit, and they do intensive research before they start this. There's one it's rated mature, but it has no nudity in it, but it has like fan service which shows cleavage and stuff about cosplayers, anime and manga cosplayers. And the guy that helps the cosplayer with her outfits creates his job that he does part-time because he's in high school is creating traditional Japanese dolls and the clothing for it. And that's how he's got his sewing skills. The guy who wrote this had no idea what cosplay was, had no idea what these dolls were. I think they're called henna dolls, but actually did on-the-job training with these people to figure all this stuff out before he wrote the manga. It's like he was curious about something, so he went all in to learn about it in order to write about it. And I just don't see that level of effort in a lot of the stuff that I read, like in Western comics.
So it's almost like a pop culture reference book.
Yeah. Like I know more about the traditional Japanese dolls than I really should, really, to be honest. But like he'll give thanks, like thanks to blah 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 henna doll shop, because he works with them, and he found out to his delight. And you read these little snippets of the biography when he wrote it, where I was thrilled to discover that they're actually been reading along in his manga, even though they're not manga fans, but they knew that they were referenced in it. So, and they are enjoying it and giving him hints and stuff. So I thought that was kind of cute. The other slice of life that I cannot recommend enough is also by the Full Metal Alchemist author. It's called Silver Spoon. Now, this is a manga, and the mangaka, it's not autobiographical, about a very gifted student that goes to high school, but it turns out he hates his family, especially his dad. So he decides to go to an agricultural high school because he could live on campus and get away from his parents. So, and it goes into great detail. So it basically covers him from the first year of high school through the 3 years, because high school's 3 years over there, which I learned in Comey Can't Communicate, of agricultural school. And he's a gifted student, and all the other students there have more on the job training. They all worked at, or their family farms, and he has none of that, but he has a very strong study ethic. So he becomes the best student, not in each subject, because always like I work at a dairy farm, so my dairy classes are the best. Like he'll finish below the top tier, but he's top tier in everything else, and it follows his progress as he started going to this school just to get away from his family, but he finds out that he loves it. And the amount of research they go into, and they go into great depth, like here's how we make cheese in this class, and here's how dairy cows are raised when you have mountainous terrain, and the level of detail they go to is like bizarre yet interesting. It's like when you get wrapped up in a dumb documentary you have no interest in, but you end up watching 2 hours of it. That's how I felt with this, but also with like some comedy stuff in there and a little bit of romance, but not much.
But what you were saying with him, like going through school and progressing, I've heard that that's like a common theme in manga, where like your main character starts out at the lower levels and you watch as he goes and masters whatever the topic of the book is.
Yeah, and you learn the terms. Like if you're a first year, everyone in the second year, you refer to them as senpai because they're older. They have all these honorifics that you learn as you read more and more manga. So senpai above, and then you have your last, like you would be Mitchell-kun, because I'm older than you and you're my friend, and that's the way they refer to him. It's you start to learn this stuff because it's common through all this manga, the sort of cultural language that you learn. But yeah, and of course they have the festival they got to do, and there's a weird thing you're going to notice of commonality is there's this thing called an indirect kiss when they want to do romance. So think if you're drinking a soda and your friend who's a girl takes it and takes a sip off the same soda you drink, that's an indirect kiss, and that's isn't that naughty? It's like I read it once, I'm like, that's weird, I guess. But then it started coming up in like 6 or 7 different books. So that must be a weird Japanese thing. They're weird. So yeah, slice of life. Comey Can't Communicate falls. I don't have one handy here, but I'm all up to date. That one's ongoing. Also available at Target. Silver Spoon, not so much. I'm also lucky enough in the Chicago area where we have a store called Kinokuniya. There's one in Chicago. Most are in California and Texas. That has the largest manga selection on the planet, and that's where you see the true weeaboos come out. But that store's great. It's also a place where you can find manga that you're not going to find at Barnes and Noble. So if you're lucky to be on the West Coast or in the Chicago area, I definitely recommend going there. What's next? A comedy romance. I kind of hinted this before that I'm enjoying manga that's not just high school kids. This one's adults out of college working their crowd, called Sweat and Soap. It's kind of a racy cover there. Common trope is the blush cheeks to indicate sexual attraction. I know that's what I do. The premise behind this is both of these the main characters work at a beauty supply place. Think like a high-end boutique, like I don't know if you're familiar with Lush, like handcrafted soaps, things like that. And the girl, the protagonist in this, excessively sweats, which I could identify with in my heavier days. But she's so traumatized by it because she was made fun of in high school that it's a main point for her. And it's not that she smells, but she just perspires a lot. And because of that, she's hyper vigilant about it. So she's at the company store picking out some soap, and this guy is the main chemist that comes up with all their scents. So he's got a very attuned, sensitive nose, and he smells her. And it's not that, and no one else can smell her, only he can because he's got the super nose. And he becomes infatuated with her scent. And it gets kind of weird, but also wholesome. So he's like the super popular alpha male of the company, and she's kind of the mousy girl. But they start a relationship, and it's a nice comedy because A, they're older, so you don't feel like a creepo when you're reading it. And B, they don't fall into the same trope that romantic comedies fall into I think universally in culture where it's all about misunderstandings and if you would have just talked to them about this wouldn't even have been an issue. They actually take care of that. They openly communicate. So there any sort of difficulties that come up, they talk them out. So it's a very mature from that perspective thing. And this is also one that's heavily recommended on BookTube, and I also recommend it.
So when I was doing my research and watching some other videos and stuff, that came up, and someone showed that there was a box set for that recently, and I'm all about
the stickers.
Yes, and it had 2 sheets of stickers, one that smelled like sweat and one that smelled like soap. I was like, that is incredibly clever.
Yes, that's the fun thing about they do a lot of the collector's edition boxes. I couldn't wait because it's going to be 2 collector boxes, but I already started, so I just finished it out. The crazy ones like My Hero Academia and One Piece is another very popular one, coming in these giant like 40 volume box sets, and they come with like posters or special side stories. But I can't wait for those. I usually end up just buying the individuals.
There was another one that I saw that caught my eye and I thought was very clever. It was I forget the full title, Toilet Bound.
Oh, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. Yep.
Yeah, and it looks like stalls in a restroom.
That I might get because I only bought volume 1 of that, so maybe I will actually pick that one up to get the funny box set. Makes it harder to fit on a shelf, but that's okay. The other genre, let's go with, I call this comedy ecchi. Ecchi is sort of like fan service, like bra and panties, wink and a nod towards the naughty bits, but no outright nudity necessarily. And this one was actually, this is a very meme-worthy one that people might recognize the character from. And you can see why. Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out. This is college age, so that's a nice thing, even though she's super, super short. This caused controversy in the West because when the last time Japan hosted the Olympics, they used her as sort of a mascot, and the U.S. Twitter freaks were so freaked out and breathless they needed their fainting couch because of the large, ample breasts of the protagonist. And how dare they objectify, even though she's the hero and probably the strongest personality in the entire series. It was funny how like it's funny like these people, they want to be like culturally sensitive, but they don't understand that in Japanese culture, people read this stuff on the subway right next to grandmas, or grandmas read it on the subway. This is tame compared to some of the stuff I may or may not own. But yeah, she basically tortures and constantly teases a friend from high school that she's also going to college with, which also, of course, is going to lead to them being romantically involved. But it's wholesome, but also has giant assets in it. The other one that falls under that category, a couple. And these are more fantasy comedies, but also in the etchiness is... this is the first ecchi one I read called Plus Sized Elf. Now, in Japan, I suspect my research indicates that the whole body acceptance movement isn't quite where it is here in the U.S. So it was nice to kind of see the main hero is a little pudgy, and the whole premise is so they have this genre called isekai, where people are transported from our world to some sort of fantasy world, either by dying or some other mishap. This one is fantasy creatures getting transported to our world. And the struggle comes in where this elf and various other monster girls, like a cyclops or a banshee or a ghost, get transported to our world, but they cannot resist delicious fried foods. So they end up getting too fat. And the rules of the portal is you can't go through the portal if you've put on any weight. You have to be the same weight and size you were when you came through the portal. So it's this girl hooking up with a athletic trainer and diet and nutritionist to get back in shape, but she can't resist French fries. So it's starting to feel like she's staying chubby, so she can't go back home, so she can stay with the trainer / nutritionist that she's fallen in love with. But yeah, and this one actually does have nudity in it, but no sexual situations. Just random, like, hey, let's go to a hot spring. Here come the boobies. Very common. Hot spring scenes show up in so many manga, and sometimes in inappropriate ways.
Your description of that sells the book to me a lot more. If I just walked by and saw that, I'm not interested.
Yeah,
But you actually like breaking it down and telling me what's in it. It's like, okay, I can see myself reading
yeah.
that.
Well, and it provides good like workout and dieting tips as well. Like now, don't fad diet. Do this. Make sure you combine your vegetables and your vegetable fiber with your carbs to help to offset them. And here's some good workout, like low impact workouts. And it shows like diagrams of how to do the workout. So it's weirdly educational. I mean, if you don't know how to do any of this stuff, I can't help you. But yeah, and again, the art is better than it needs to be. And also, food is a very common thing in a lot of these manga. Like even there's manga that's just about food, like one called Food Wars. So think of like a Shonen Jump type action thing, but instead of fighting, they do cooking battles, a la Iron Chef, and like over the top. So that even shows up in here. Like here's how to make some healthy French fries. Who wants that? The other one that's also very very popular is Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Again, this is one where fantasy creatures come to our reality. In this case, she's a evil chaos dragon. Well, not evil. She's a chaos dragon. She breeds chaos. She's slain by the gods she tries to kill, almost slain. And Miss Kobayashi is the normal person that finds her while she's drunk on sake, and pulls the sword out of her heart and heals her, so she becomes devoted to Miss Kobayashi. So there's a little bit of Yuri is female on female romance. There's a little bit of a Yuri thing going on between the dragon that can take human form and Miss Kobayashi. The dragon is always trying to, their tails regrow. So she'll slice off part of her tail and roast it, and it's delicious, but Miss Kobayashi won't eat it, no matter how many times she tries. Then other dragons start coming in and also wanting to hang out with Miss Kobayashi. But this one also does have frontal nudity. Not full frontal, just topless. Doesn't even really need to be there, but I appreciate that it is there. And another way you could tell that it's popular is they've released a color special edition where it's just like some of the best stories, but in full color. And almost all the panels have nudity in it. So I recommend getting this one for sure, after you've read a first few of the volumes.
So I think you mentioned it on one of the videos on your channel, but the popularity of books where like that one is in color, and you mentioned too looking at seeing how much merch there was to gauge the popularity of a series. Where normally, I don't care about the popularity because that means it's good, but that may mean it's easier to find.
Yes, absolutely. Like it'll stay in print. Because like anything, you could always get it if you're willing to pay the price. But I've actually found some stuff that's actually coming back in print, so it's good to be patient with that stuff. If people are still talking about a manga and it's out of print, chances are it'll eventually get a reprint. Yeah, like that cosplay one that I was talking about. It's my dress up dolling about the Japanese dolls. Like if there's a Nendroid for it, these are like the basically Funko Pops for people with money and self-respect. If they make these for them, it's popular. This one actually came with a miniature waifu huggy pillow, which I appreciate. Also, a common trope is weird, dirty white guys with their waifus, which is their wife, their anime wife, and a pillow that they can snuggle with. And then I have one bonus one that I just remembered that kind of combines genres of the food genre and food and adventure and fantasy and action. This was called Delicious Dungeon. So basically it's a dungeon crawl, which there's basically a world, and this is a common trope as well, a world where it's a fantasy world, but in the center of this world is a never-ending dungeon, like layers and layers and layers of dungeon. This is about people that go on adventures in that with the sole purpose of killing monsters to find out what delicious meals you can make out of them. And it also has recipes that call for, you need 5 pounds of orc meat. And it'll say like a parentheses, you could use pork, So there's substitutions allowed. Like, oh, do you have a wheat allergy? Use this. If you can't find dragon, here's what you can use. You can use chicken. But yeah, like detailed recipes that actually sometimes sound, I'm not going to have orc meat, but that sound actually pretty good. And even though it's black and white, their ability to draw some of this food that makes you hungry while reading it. So was that all my main recommendations? Yes. So like I said, the mainstream ones from here: Spy Family, Kaiju number 8. Those can be found at Target or Walmart, and like many opportunities to get those at 20% off or even higher. Sometimes they have like a cartwheel with Target to get even more off. If you really get into manga, I recommend getting the Barnes & Noble membership to get a 10% off anything. But Barnes & Noble also has sales where they'll do like buy one, get one free, or buy one, get one 50% off. That sale just happened, so that's a good time to stock up. And also after Christmas is the common sale they have is buy one hardcover, get one free, or buy two, get one free. I forget what it was. But that's where I get these super mega editions. This is Helsing. These are basically omnibus size. With a nice ribbon bookmark. These are like, what's the list on this? $50. So basically half price on this. So this is when I stock up on those special editions. Helsing has these big volumes. Berserk is another very popular one that has those deluxe volumes. So yeah, I recommend those greatly. And they look great on the shelf. I haven't even started reading this. I did watch the anime though, a long time ago. So I'm looking forward to that as sort of a vampire Nazi horror. Highly recommend.
All right. Well, that's a lot of recommendations there.
Yeah.
I do have a bit of a surprise for you. I have my first manga haul. I went out and bought some stuff. So I will be reading it, and then I will be able to report back to you. So the first thing I got from our previous conversation was Kaiju number 8.
Nice. Yep.
Volume 1 and 2.
I think you'll like it.
Ooh. So that's probably the one that I'm going to read first. And I've actually been I've been holding off because I wanted this video to come out and be, on the up and up. I don't want
it's you coming out of the closet.
Yeah, sure. But I am super excited about reading that, and I'm probably going to dive into it pretty soon. But the other one, I got those at Barnes, and then I found this one there as well. Blitz.
Oh yes, the chess falls
So
under sports manga. Yep.
Oh, it does have a volume number, so I guess it's going to be ongoing. But at first, I didn't see the volume number, so I wasn't sure if it's a one shot or not. But I'm super interested in chess, and this looked pretty cool, so I'm going to give that a whirl.
They need to make one that's based on Blood Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. The next one I got at Walmart. It is the Attack on Titan Omni for the first 3 volumes.
Nice. Those are also and also have a lot of box sets for them, and the Omnis are great because you're getting like usually 2, sometimes 3 volumes for the price of 2, basically, or even less.
Yep. And then I sold some stuff at Half Price Books, and I was looking around in their stuff, and I think I made my first mistake with manga already.
Is it going to be a boys love manga?
No. I did find a boys love baseball manga that I was like, oh, it's a baseball manga. Okay.
Where are they putting that bat?
Well, it's like the shortstop or the pitcher loves the shortstop, but the shortstop won't give him the time of day until he throws a perfect game. I was like, this isn't a healthy relationship. I'm not on board with this.
That is a trope, though, because another one I'm reading that you can see, like I have the wall scroll here. It's called "Don't Toy with Me, Miss Nagatoro." It's common to have like a bully girl who's clearly infatuated with a guy but picks on him type. Kind of like the reverse of how in grade school, if the guy's mean to the girl, it means he likes her. She says she will finally kiss the boy once she beats so and so in a judo match. So it's like there's a goal to reach before you can get romantic fulfillment.
I'm just not sure if that's a healthy way to start a relationship.
No, it's not.
So my mistake, I found this book and it checked off a lot of my interest. So I grabbed it and bought it with my credit from selling stuff without really exploring it too much. And then I got it home and I looked at it and I don't think it's for me. But Monster Wrestling Volume 1. So yeah. So the Half Price Book sticker was over the parental advisory. And
no, that's how you know it's good.
But they were completely blocking it off. I couldn't have done. But yeah, I will still give it a try, but I'm not sure if this is for me anymore. But I like monsters. I like wrestling. I thought it was going to be good.
Let me tell you about the Monster Girl is a whole genre, to the point where they actually made guidebooks to Monster Girls that explain. Think of it like the GI Joe file cards, but for Monster Girls. Of course, this is all Monster Girls are about sexual things, but that's Japan. Yeah, I haven't read this yet, but I didn't see anything super crazy. The art looks fun, but I'm not seeing.
We'll see. I mean, I own it, so I have to read it. Right?
Maybe work your way up to it.
Yeah,
you have to slowly escalate your degeneracy before you head on in.
Yeah. And then the last one I have is the one that you gifted me
a
few years ago. So after I read a few of those starter mangas,
there's a short story in there, and double check. It's called like The Fault of Something, about a geological formation that is my favorite Junji Ito story. Basically, there's this cliff face with these human-sized holes in them, and it's a whole horror story built around that. That's my favorite short story by him. I think it is in that book.
All right. Well, I will definitely look for that. But yeah, so that's it. That's my first haul to see if I can try out manga and see if it sticks.
Oh, I forgot. I want to mention that another great place for manga, if you're not in a hurry to get it, like you don't mind waiting a week and a half or so, and Brian, I think you're going to put in the description, is Right Stuff Anime.
Yes.
That is the most consistently budget-friendly place to get your manga. So it's also what I use it as my source too, by looking at pre-orders and sorting by date, and then I know what's coming out each and every month and every week.
That's what I was going to ask too. Like, how do you keep track of when stuff's coming out, like the ongoing series and stuff? Like, do you use that website to kind of?
I use that website, look at pre-orders, and then I sort by oldest to new, and then you'll see. And then, like a lot of comics, stuff gets delayed. But if I know, like, hey, it's coming out next week and they're showing it in stock, that means it actually is going to ship on time.
Okay.
Also, Barnes & Noble pro tip, go the Friday before manga release Tuesday, and get it early. Barnes & Noble usually puts their stuff out early.
All right. So Tuesday is the normal?
Is the official release day. Yep. But you can usually get it on Friday.
All right. Well, I have learned a lot. I'm anxious to read some, and hopefully we can do a follow-up video after I've read some and go over my thoughts there and see. I'm excited. I think it's going to go well, but we'll see.
And most of these are even simple enough for you to understand, too.
Yeah. I mean, kaiju, right?
Yeah.
How can you go wrong? But yeah, is there anything else you want to say before we end this thing?
No, and I just want it known that I only read manga as a goof.
Okay.
Because I can't make fun of something if I don't know anything about it. I'm not really into it.
Right. I can tell by your room there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being on, and I hope we can get back together again and talk about manga in the future once I've read some.
Welcome to degeneracy.